What's up guys, welcome back to the channel. This is Austin back again with a simple tutorial. So in case you always wanted to get the information about the current internet that you're connected on, this is the best tutorial to watch on YouTube right now. So basically what you're seeing on your screen is the internet connection information of the current internet that I'm connected on. So you can see my country is Uganda, the city is Kampala, and the most important part, the internet organization that I'm using right now is Kampala City Cable Limited, as you're seeing on your screen. That's my router. So depending on the country that you'll be you'll be able to see different values here. So depending on your country, or if you're using a VPN, so basically they will get your public IP address, and in case you're wondering what is IP, it's Internet Protocol Address. So basically any type of internet connection that you'll be on, you'll be able to see different values here. And we are going to be using two simple APIs. The first one is the IP geolocation API. So basically this API is what gives us these values or this information that you're seeing below here. And the next API that we're going to be using is the JSONIP.com. So what this site does, it returns back a simple object with your public IP address. Very, very simple. So I'm going to show you why we need this API for a start. So if you have to click here on API documentation, and the response format that we are going to be using is JSON. Click on JSON, and here they show you the URL that you have to access, and this query part takes in the IP address, so the public IP address, and this is why we need this JSONAPI.com. So we will first make a request to this site. We get the public IP address for our connection, and then we pass into this API to return back the information that you saw on your screen. I guess you're not lost, and you're going to be seeing how simple it is as we go on. So in my text editor here, I created two files. They are all empty apart from the boilerplate of HTML here. So I have app.js, which is completely empty. Then I have index.html, and the title is internet information. Very, very simple. So we are just going to write a little bit of markup here. So we are going to create a div and give it an ID of internet underscore info. So this is user defined. These IDs are user defined. You can call them anything that you want. And above here, I'm going to put some h2, and this h2 is going to have a text of IP address, then there's colons, then a span with the ID of IP value. So still this is user defined, and this is going to be empty. Basically this is the markup that we need right now. And let us not forget to link our app.js file to this document. So script sr for source, and then we want to link the app.js file. Since they're in the same directory, we don't have to put these absolute path or relative paths. So this is what we are having. This is the simple markup that we need in our HTML index.html file. Then let us go and get hold of these elements, the one with the ID of IP value and internet info. So for a start, let us create a variable here, and we say we are going to call it the internet div. This is user defined, it's a variable, and we are going to say document.querySelector, and then we specify the ID for this element, so which is internet info. So you make sure you say hash internet info. So now we have access to that element in the DOM. Again, we access our span, and it's going to be the IP span. This is user defined, and we assign it to documents.querySelector, and then you pass in the ID of that element, sorry, that tag. So sorry, hash, whoa, I just press scoped, it's IP value. So now we have access to these two elements in the DOM. Then we are going to create a very simple function here, and we say get IP address. This is the name of the function, and we are going to use fetch. So we say fetch, the fetch API, and then we pass in this URL. Remember, we first want to get the public IP address of our connection. So we get this URL and we pass into here. Since it returns back a promise, we say .then, not then, it's then the response, curly brackets, and return, it returns back JSON data in the format. So we say res.json. Then here we go again, it returns back a promise again. We say .then, and this is the data that is passing back, the actual data that we are going to be working with. So here we can say console.log, and we say data. Then in case we run into errors, we can pass in also the catch method here. So we say error, say console.log, and we say back, I'm going to use backticks, there was an error, then $ curly brackets, and we pass in that error. Right now we have to call this function. Let's say call it here, save that. Let us open our file in the browser. So right click here if you're using VS Code and say open with live server, or you can go directly and access this, but you need to be on some sort of a server. Right click, inspect, and we should see some data in the console. So console. So here they are showing us there is an object that was returned back from the API, and you're seeing this information that you're seeing here in the console. So right now we have access to this API, not API, sorry, IP address. So here in our JavaScript, you can say data.ip, and you'll see they give us back that public IP address. Let me put it side by side. So since we have access to this, now it's a great way to start working on our IP geolocation API. So remember, they said here in the query you pass in that public IP address. Very, very simple. So here I'm going to create another function, and I'm going to call it get internet info. So that function is user defined. You can call it anything you want, internet info, my internet info, anything that you call it. So what I'm going to do after here, I'm going to use this. Remember here we have access to that IP address, right? So I'm going to get this function and pass it here. So we are going to pass in the IP address, and here I'm just going to write IP address to represent what we are passing into this function, IP here, and I'm going to create a variable here to make it obvious, and I call it IP address, and assign it to this parameter that I passed into this function, so IP address. Then I'm going to make a fetch request, and we are going to make it to this simple API URL. So it's ip-api.com/JSON. Then you pass in the IP address, which is this. Now let me stay uniform and I use backticks. Let us use backticks, and we are going to pass in $ curly brackets, then we pass in this IP address. Remember, the internet info, we are passing in that IP address that we got from the API, this API. I'm set that then, since it returns back a promise, res curly brackets here, we return that res.json. Then again we say dot then the actual data that we can read and pass into the browser. And we are first going to console.log that data. Then in case we run into errors, we can catch them. Oh, why does this stay in my way? Error, arrow function, we say console.log backticks. There was, I don't know why I read that, there was an error in fetching the info. Then we output that error, which is error, ERR. So right now, if you have to go to the browser and check, we should be seeing some information here. Very well. So here they are returning back an object, and it has the different internet information about our current connection. So here you can see the organization, the query, which is the IP address that we got from the other JSONAPI.com. We have our region, we have our time zone, there is a zip, the city, and the country. So right now we know we have access to those informations, right? To that information, sorry. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comment section. So guys, now we have access to that information. We can easily now inject this type of information in the browser. What we are going to do first is create a simple variable here, and I'm going to call it output, and I'm going to set it to nothing for a start. And then here I'm going to use that variable output and then append it to these HTML elements. So you can drop down, and we are going to say it's going to be a URL, and the list items, so li, and first we are going to write the text, like what the user will be reading, so country, and we shall say $, it's going to be data dot country. Let me first console that information as we work on it, the data, and let me set it side by side so that we'll be able to see it. So we have country, that's correct. Then copy it below. We have city, and here it is also city, so data.city. And let me wrap these, we are going to wrap those values into strong tags, but now we can get the lat, and it also has data.lat. Let me first copy them several times, then we get the long, make this capital, and it will be data.long for the longitude. Yeah, then we get the region name, region, and we say data.region name. We get the organization, so you can use ZOS. The organization that is serving you that internet is in org, so data.org. What else? What can we get from this simple object that they return back to us? The time zone. So time zone, and it is in also time zone. So data.time zone. The zip. Now I'm going to show you this thing of the zip. Let me just copy this. Then the zip code. So for a start, there are some countries, like right now my country or this organization doesn't have a zip. So here you can say, you can put in the shorthand if statement. So question mark, if there is like a zip, so sorry, here data.zip, if there is a zip, then we are going to say data.zip. Else, then we say unavailable here, and in the brackets we say variable. Then here we say no zip code. Right? So here we're saying if the zip code is there, then output the zip. Else, if it's not there, then you are going to be seeing this in front of the zip, unavailable, no zip code. So now it's time to inject this information that we are consoling in the console here to the document. And remember, we have access to that element stored in this variable that we have internet div. So here, instead of logging this out, we can say internet div.innerHTML, and then we set it to output. So output is what is holding this URL. Save this, and we should be seeing this information in the browser. So as you saw, let me again console.log that data. So you see here, there is no zip, so it's empty. If it's empty, then the user will be seeing this, unavailable. So this is what the user will be seeing if that country or the internet connection that you're connected to doesn't have a zip. So you'll be seeing this. Let me now remove this, and we are going to add some little bit of styling. So as always, the best framework, front-end framework, Materialize. Just click here, CSS, agent in components. We're going to use collections. Yeah, but first we need to pull in those CDNs. So the CSS CDN, which is this, put it in the head section. Then also, right now, I guess you don't need this, but in case you want to put like drop downs, collapsible elements, you can also add this JavaScript script. Then for the collections, for our URL, it falls into Materialize calls them corrections. So we need to pass this class to our URL element, sorry, not URL, UL element tag, sorry. Then also we go on passing these to the list items. So if you are to refresh, this is what you'll be seeing in the browser. So they are somehow arranged, having those simple stylings. Then we need to inject also the IP address here up here. So here where we get this IP address from, we can just say, remember we created this variable of IP span. So below here we can just say IP span.inner HTML, and we assign it to data.ip. So here you'll be seeing the IP address and the different information here. And let us wrap these into the strong tags that I told you about. And also don't forget the closing tag for strong. And this is what you'll be seeing. So they are somehow bold. You see the country, all stuff like that. Let me add some simple styling here. Deal with the class of container, and these stylings will be coming from the Materialize framework. And let me put some inline stylings, and I'm going to select that deal with the ID of internet info, internet underscore info. I'm going to give it a width of 800 pixels and a maximum width of 80%. So these are all stylings just, and I want to center it. Margin 0 auto. Save that, and this is what we are having. So we have access to this type of information of the internet connection that we are currently connected to. So as you're seeing on the screen, that's my router, and this is the organization that is giving me this internet connection. Let me try out Opera, where there are VPNs, and we try to connect to a VPN. So currently I'm in Opera Mini and I have connected to a VPN. So if I'm to refresh this browser, you are going to see they are going to give me back a different public IP address and the information about that internet that I'm connected on. So the country is German, this is the city, this is the region, and this is the organization that is serving that internet to me, and this is the time zone and the zip. So remember, in Uganda, this country, all the information, there is no zip code, but here in German there is a zip code, and this is the simple shorthand if statement that we put. If there is a zip code here, output that zip code, else put a variable in brackets, no zip code. So that's the simple code that we wrote to get this type of information about the current internet that you'll be connected on. So guys, if you got something from this tutorial, please go ahead, subscribe to my channel, like the video, and I'll be seeing you in the next tutorial. Peace.